This podcast is supported by Music Theater of Wenatchee, celebrating 64 years of bringing stories to life. From show-stopping musicals to powerful plays, the Music Theater of Wenatchee stage is where stories come alive. Now they are writing the next chapter, and you can help make it happen. To support the next act of community theater in Wenatchee, visit annex.mtow.org and donate today.
Opening night club.
We're not opening a nightclub.
It's the opening night club. We can't wait to watch an opening night show, because on opening night we always go with our opening night club. Opening night club.
Welcome back to the Opening Night Club podcast. This is the podcast where we get together every week to discuss and celebrate all of the local theater that goes on around Central Washington. I'm your host, Kevin McKee, and with me again today, glad to have you back. It is actor, director, playwright, and my friend, Skyler Cuthill. How are you doing?
Kevin, I'm great. It's great to be back. It feels like it's been forever since I've been down here.
It's been a while, man.
Yeah.
We've got a lot to talk about. We've had opening nights that we need to talk about. We've got opening nights coming up, auditions, and we can talk a lot about 1776, which opened up this weekend.
Yes, we are both in 1776. It opened last night, so we are fresh off of that. And then you just got back here from seeing Anything Goes.
I did. And later on, I do want to say we'll be discussing the actual history behind the musical 1776 and how far it was away from the actual facts. And luckily, we do have our resident historian for the podcast, which we don't dive into the historian very often, but we do have our historian, Skyler Cuthill.
Well, 1776 is a very historically oriented play.
Yes.
Versus most, which are like in a setting, but aren't really engaging with it, where 1776 is like half history lesson.
Yes.
Well, that's kind of the concept.
Well, and there's a lot of people that came away from it saying, oh, I did not realize that was in the original draft of the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah. No, and I'll say that just as like a spoiler, it's not very accurate, but the thrust is accurate, which is often the case with historical fiction.
Yeah.
But like the idea is there, and then they have to rearrange it to make like a story.
And I think it's closer than Anastasia will be.
Some feelings about that one. The cartoon is great because it's so silly that it loops back around, and it's like, whatever, fine. Okay. Aristotle said that people are more willing to believe in impossibility than in improbability.
Oh.
Yeah, so like you have Rasputin casting magic spells to cause the revolution. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. But then the musical theater version of Anastasia tries to be more realistic, and I go,
well,
not
and
quite.
if we do have a expert in Russian history in the room,
where could that
would
guy
probably be you. So
yeah, it's fine. It doesn't really engage with. They're not talking about like the decline of the Romanovs and Anastasia. It's fine. She just didn't exist.
Yes,
I mean she existed, but she died. She wasn't. It didn't happen.
Maybe.
Yeah, oh man, maybe.
You never know.
Maybe, yeah.
You never know. So the opening nights that we had, actually, we skipped the opening night for Anything Goes because we've been hot and heavy in rehearsals for 1776, but we did open up 1776 this weekend. Bright Star opened up at Leavenworth Summer Theater, and coming up next week, we are opening up As You Like It for the Short Shakespeareans at the Riverside Playhouse. So, coming up this next week, make sure, first off, go see 1776. I hear it's good. And
it was sold out last night.
Oh, there we go.
Or it was extremely full, right?
Yes.
I mean, you looked out there. It was really packed.
Yeah, we're packing this one. Get tickets to 1776. If it's not sold out tonight, it's going to be selling out, and it's very quickly you won't be able to get a ticket to the hottest ticket in town, 1776. But go to see Short Shakes. That has been selling out. That's one weekend. So this next weekend is your only time to see As You Like It with the Short Shakespeareans, which is, it's an amazing program, and support those kids and support that program.
I always like their shows when I go to see them.
Yes.
I don't have any kids, and I don't have any kids, so I don't have any kids in the program. But you know what I mean? I don't have I don't have an angle or whatever to push. I'm not saying little Joey was so good. No, they're good shows. They're funny. They zhuzh it up.
Yeah.
Right. They make it. I mean, these are comedies, but they they make it even funnier.
Yeah.
And the Atwoods, they know what they're doing.
Yes, that's right. So go see that show. But I wanted to say, I just got back from Anything Goes. We were able to cram in a matinee for Anything Goes before the evening show for 1776. And Dana has put together an amazing show. I've been in Anything Goes twice. I've seen it multiple times. And a lot of what she's done, I was like, oh, that's the best I've ever seen that. Oh, that's the best I've ever seen that. And I do want to call out Allison Cooper and Katie Perez, who were the choreographers. And it was amazing choreography. Some numbers that I generally don't see choreography, they just kind of step around the stage. There was fantastic choreography. And so if you get a chance, go and see this show. Christina Capehart is Reno Sweeney, and she is fantastic.
They did the choreography for Legally Blonde, which had excellent choreography.
Yes.
Yeah, going from strength to strength, huh, ladies?
They're just killing it. I really, really enjoyed it. I do want to call out Billy Crocker, who's being played by Dove Matthews. He was a fill-in. They announced at the beginning of the show that he wasn't in the program as Billy Crocker, but he was fantastic. In the program, he was cast as ensemble. He was very undercast because he has a great voice, and the kid can act. He's very, very good. I saw him. He played Zeller in Sound of Music, and when I talked about that show, he was a standout as Zeller, which is hard to be a standout in a role that small, but he's able to do it. He's also a vocal director for some of the shows. He was children's vocal director.
Talented fellow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So he's in Seattle, and boy, I hope we see more of Dove Matthews coming back over, because he is really, really a fine talent for that show.
And we all know and love Christina Capehart.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, boy.
And Reno kind of is the show. I mean, Billy Crocker's the lead, but you think of the show, you think of Reno Sweeney, right?
She got final bow in this show because...
Oh, yeah.
No, it is Christina...
That's what you think of.
That's
right?
what you think of.
Flo Gabriel Blow.
Yes.
Right.
No, she was great and just was beautiful, looked fantastic on stage. I love what she was able to do with Reno Sweeney. Paul Atwood played Moonface Martin, and he was perfect.
Dana always, because that's her background, that she was a costumer and kind of still is. She always has excellent costumes. Her shows always look really good.
Yeah, no, the show looked really good. The set was enormous, and things were popping out all over the place. Very complicated set, but things that made me giggle and ooh and ah all the way through.
Good.
It was a lot of fun.
So you liked Anything Goes. You recommend Anything Goes.
I would really say go watch Anything Goes. It is a show that just moves, and it's just joke. They're corny. The setups are obvious sometimes, but it is so funny all the way through. Near the end, they pull the dog out of the swimming pool, and she says, "What was the dog doing in the swimming pool?" And the entire cast says, the dog paddle.
Oh.
Yes.
I wasn't there, folks, but I just thought about it for half a second.
So it's that type of humor. All of the songs, all of the songs.
That stuff works. You just have to commit to it 100%.
Yes.
Right. You can't have anybody winking at the audience or whatever.
No, it was done very, very well.
Oh, good.
And Paul Atwood had a lot of it, and he had all of the Atwood charm on it, and he was killing it. His dances were big. The songs were big. He's just such a funny guy, super talented. And Marcus Wolf was in it as he was either Skippy or Dippy.
One of the white gangsters.
He was one of the white gangsters. There's no longer Chinese gangsters. He was one of the white gangsters. And he did a thing, we've talked about him before last year, that he's got a certain Gumby ability to his body.
Very Muppety.
Very Muppety.
Yeah, very strong Kermit the Frog energy.
Yeah. And so there was, and I noticed that the first time it was the worst, but the two gangsters come down the stairs. He's coming down first, and it's just like he's hitting all of the stairs on his heels. Thop, 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 thop. And all I could think was he's going to roll an ankle. It was so funny, but it was also like it took my breath away that how do you do that without injuring yourself?
You saw Beauty and the Beast, right?
Yes.
LST, right? When he was LeFou.
Yes.
Extremely physical.
He's made out of rubber.
Yeah,
I don't know how he does it.
Tough dude. Marcus Wolf.
No. It was really good. So anyhow, Anything Goes, fantastic show. If you get a chance, go see Anything Goes.
Great.
And we had opening night for 1776.
Yes.
Which we got great feedback on. I think we had a very rough dress rehearsal. I know my song, I completely effed it up and then did not come back for the tag afterwards. And it was bad.
It was really funny looking back on it that I yelled at you with like enormous emotion, like very genuine. I remember.
Yes.
I was like, Kevin!
There was people yelling at me backstage. So if we did have an audience, they would hear everybody yelling the name of an actor to get back on stage.
I rarely have like genuine emotion like that, but I really was like, Kevin, what are you doing?
Yeah, no.
It was funny. It was funny. Skyler actually felt something crazy.
Yeah. The number worked fine on opening night. I think I could really start using some sleep, and the number will get better.
Yes, we have been working very hard.
We've been working really hard, and the vocal cords are starting to go. So,
well, and it's smoky.
That's
not helping.
That's really hurting me.
Yeah.
So 1776, if you haven't seen it, why not? You're listening to the opening night club. You could have been on opening night. So make sure you get out there and get a ticket to not to opening night, but to 1776.
It runs 3 weekends.
Yes.
Right. So you still have plenty of time.
Yes.
By the time you hear this, the first weekend will be done.
Yeah.
But you still have plenty of time. We even perform on Wednesdays.
Yes.
Right. So there's a lot of performances.
And there's tickets left now, but there won't be. So get your tickets.
Yeah.
What we wanted to discuss was the show itself. And the show is actually an historical show where what you're seeing on stage is based around actual events and things that you probably studied at some point in your U.S. history class.
These kinds of shows have gone out of favor, but historically speaking, a lot of shows were about a specific historical event, like Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Half of it is about a specific king or a specific event, Caesar getting stabbed, that kind of thing, Mark Antony, right? So this used to be a very popular genre. It's just nowadays not so much, right?
And I think people used to know more about this part of American history. This is really the founders of the U.S.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty short period of time, and they don't explain what happened before or what happened afterwards. This is all about the development and signing of the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah. It's a complicated topic. And again, this show, the thrust is correct, right? So if you come in not knowing anything, you haven't gotten a bad deal walking out, right? You're going to come away with a more accurate than inaccurate idea. Let's be clear on that.
Well, the things to know before the show starts, George Washington is commanding an army, and there's an active war going on, although there's nothing happening. There's a conflict.
Yeah,
they've had the shot heard around the world. Lexington and Concord's happened.
Yeah,
but there's no official war because nothing's been declared.
Well, it's a very interesting situation. So I have lecture notes ready. So
of course.
Jump in whenever you like.
Okay,
but
let's hear it from the historian.
As intro, I'm from Leavenworth, right? So Sound of Music was an important part of my life or whatever growing up.
Yeah.
And I remember I have a very distinct memory of when I was 15 and I learned that it's mostly lies. The structure is correct, but the details are all wrong. There was a real life Captain von Trapp. He was an Austrian nobleman. He married a nun. I mean, she wasn't a nun at the time, but you know what I mean? They had a bunch of kids and then they left when the Nazis took over. This is all true.
Yes.
But beyond that, it's all crazy made up stuff for the sake of theater, right? Apparently, the dad was the nice one. The kids loved Captain Von Trapp, and they did not like Maria. Maria was apparently very difficult to work with. Yeah. She was not a nice lady.
She came from the Abbey.
Yeah. And she was very young, you know, so she didn't instantly take to it or whatever. She's like, children. And the Nazis wanted you to leave if you weren't with the program. Yeah. This worked out for everybody. They shook you down. They took everything. But if you weren't, for them, they were like, yeah, great, we go, please do.
Yeah.
So there was no law against leaving. They didn't take off in the middle of the night through the aid of trickery. They got in their car and they drove to the port and then they got on a boat. Right. So again, but that's not theater, is it?
Yeah.
Right.
That's not
tension.
a good story.
No. So I understand why they did it. And again, the thrust is correct, right? So the 1776 is kind of the same way. So talking about like the material background, it's a very interesting situation. So we talked a little while ago that the revolution really comes out of the 7 Years' War, which is this huge conflict that takes place all over the world. And the main thing for us is that Britain pushes France totally out of North America.
Yes.
Right. Huge British victory. And then Britain and America have very differing angles on what has happened and what should happen. Now, the American angle is we provided all these militia, we fought really bravely for the empire, so now we get rewarded. And Britain's angle was we put out so much money to protect the colonies against France, now we get paid, right? So all the taxation acts, so on and so forth, are so that Britain can pay off the war effort.
Well, and they also claimed a lot of land, which was Indian land, which was to the west of where the colonies were. That was all Quebec, which was now Canada, which would stay British even after the war.
So, and the British, their general aim was to keep the cost of administration low. So they hated fighting the natives.
Yes.
Right. But the American settlers, the white settlers, they wanted to fight the natives because that's where the land was. Right.
Yeah.
So that was a important. Number one, they hated the French, so they didn't like Quebec getting bigger. But number two, they wanted to be expanding west, pushing over the Appalachians. And the British were like, nah, just stay there. Stay there and make us money.
Yeah. No, they wanted the colonies to stay in the borders that they had set.
Yeah.
And the colonies already thought that they owned into what was now Quebec.
Yeah. They were already, if you look at the old maps, Virginia like went all the way to the Mississippi. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no real world claim there. They just drew it on a map.
Yes.
But you know what I mean. So anyway, after the 7 Years' War, there's like a 10-year period of growing unrest that develops into essentially an insurgency. And it's very interesting that all of these towns and counties and so on and so forth in the colonies developed shadow governments, essentially. They found committees of public safety all over the place. And these committees of public safety essentially take over administration, just like with the consent of the governed. Everybody agrees to start doing this.
Okay.
And they... check this out. They write declarations saying that America needs to fight Britain.
Okay.
Right. So there's actually a ton of declarations of independence. There's just not the Declaration of Independence. And we'll hook back into that later. But it's very interesting. So there wasn't a formal government. So talking about that, there's a war, but there isn't. So Lexington and Concord is the British garrison in Boston. Here's that in Concord, they're storing powder. There's essentially a Patriot munitions dump, and they send out a column to go and take it. And the militiamen show up, and on the way to Concord is the village of Lexington, and all these militiamen come out, and they get the hell shot out of them by the British. And then the British keep going, and by the time they get to Concord, now there's a lot more militiamen, and the militiamen actually really soundly defeat the British, and the British have to flee back to Boston. And so it starts with an American defeat, but it ends in great American victory. The Americans invest Boston and immediately raise an army to try and conquer Canada. That's their aim. They're like,
really?
Yeah, Canada. That's the whole aim. They dispatched Benedict Arnold to try and conquer Canada.
Wow.
And that initially goes really well, and then they get defeated at Quebec, and they have to come back. It's a terrible defeat.
Well, and at the time, all of the colonies really felt like they were their own countries.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of camaraderie initially, and that's part of the reason they had these the congresses where they would get together, and that was just to communicate and try to work to get the same aims. But they all kind of believed at the end they were going to be able to run their own little area.
So the Continental Congress is the first and only national government at the time, right? There's no executive branch, there's no judicial branch. It is only these representatives hanging out in Philadelphia trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the setup, is that at the end of that, so the Americans invest Boston, and then Bunker's Hill is the British trying to push out and defeat. The Americans have set up cannons to bombard Boston, and they win, but they don't. They take such horrible casualties that Burgoyne, the commanding officer in Boston, decides to abandon Boston. Yeah. And the British pull out. So in 1776, when our show was set, the British actually controlled none of America. They have Canada, but none of the 13 colonies. They're completely in rebel hands. And the British governors are all either captured or they're on ships. Quote, governing, unquote, their territories from like a ship with a line off the coast. So it's in a weird, interesting period where like stuff has happened, but there's not a real war going, right? There's no fighting actively going on anymore. The Canada campaign's been defeated. Everybody's just kind of hanging out. And so that is the political divide, is the Tories, the conservatives in America saying, okay, this has gotten way out of hand, but let's try and calm it down, and let's try and, wrap this up. And the liberals, the John Adams wing, saying, no, we've gone too far. King George is not going to have mercy on us. We have to go all the way now.
But this was also the same time where Washington does have an army, and they are trying to set up and defeat the British as the British are coming in.
Yeah.
That we had the Boston Tea Party. They had people that were treasonous to the British crown.
Yeah, so Washington is commanding an officer that is currently in our show about to defend New York against the British Expeditionary Force. So after Boston and all that happens, King George gets insanely pissed off and organizes a huge armada and a huge expeditionary force to come and take back America. So that's the context, is that they're like, okay, maybe we try and resolve this peacefully, because a ton of dudes are coming, and they're much better than the militiamen, right?
Yeah.
And so the Battle of New York is about to happen at the end of the show, and it's a huge American defeat. Washington gets really badly outfoxed. The British slip past him, and it's a terrible American rout. They abandon New York, and then Washington almost gets fired. He spends like the next 6 months trying to like preserve his position until the miracle on the Delaware, Battle of Trenton, where they ambush the Hessians. And then, his prestige is back, and he's completely in control again. But yeah, so it's a weird, again, there's a war, but there isn't.
Yeah.
There's a government, but there isn't. It's a very weird situation. And so that leads into the political history of the Declaration, which is that this high drama of them all voting and the votes barely pass and everything is tied all the way down. This did not happen. Mostly they were waiting for instructions from their state legislatures to tell them to vote for independence or not.
So they didn't have a lot of control by themselves.
They weren't supposed to.
Okay.
So for example, Pennsylvania was against independence, but that was because historically the Pennsylvania State House was run by Quakers. And the Quakers are anti-violence. So they were like, we will never vote for war. Never, ever. It wasn't because they were rich or whatever. They were religiously against violence, period. So eventually there's like a judicial coup or whatever, and the governor, they dissolve the Pennsylvania State House and elect a new one, which is not Quakers, right? And they go, violence. We love it. So you can't have in your show the villains be non-violent Quakers. Yeah. So you go, it's going to be a rich guy instead who loves money, right? Yeah. So Dickinson was not, we can't have independence because I love money. Yeah. Right. I don't think he himself was a Quaker, or maybe he was. No, he wasn't, because he did join the army, like they say in the show. But he was representing his people, and his people did not want violence. But that's not good theater. That's not a good art.
No,
right?
And it turns out he was actually very well-spoken and a pretty nice guy. Yeah. He just did not want to go to war and have thousands of men die.
Yeah, and this is a reasonable position also because Britain was the strongest empire in the world. So this is crazy, right?
Yeah, they just won a war against France.
Yeah, they're a big deal. But again, you can't have your villains be anti-violence Quakers, right? Yeah. So you move it around. And Edward Rutledge was like friends with John Adams, and Richard Henry Lee was very smart and not a buffoon, right? No. So they moved around the characters a lot. And so it doesn't come down to Wilson deciding that he wants to preserve his anonymity at the end by voting for independence. That simply didn't happen. Right? They got rid of the Quakers and then they voted. Again, you got to juice it up. You got to sex it up, right, to make it a more compelling story. Yeah,
that was something I was reading about Virginia and the Lees, where they were going through and talking about the different families, because there were a lot of families. And you were saying before that the South wasn't really religious at all.
No. And
so, but they had the different families. They had the Smiths, who were farmers, the bakers who were anyhow, they had all the different people with their strengths. That this was a tall group. This was a very and the Lees could talk. Yeah. They were very well spoken. They were all orators. And so that kind of, it doesn't mesh with how my character's portrayed.
Southern buffoon.
No.
Yeah. Thomas Jefferson and Richard Henry Lee were like friends. Thomas Jefferson...
Oh, very much,
sent him... This is funny, and we'll go into this, but he sent him the original Declaration of Independence to Lee and said, isn't this much better than what they did later?
Yeah.
And Lee was like, yeah, you did great. You're a very smart guy. So then into the actual composition of the Declaration of Independence, Martha Jefferson did not come to Philadelphia to have sex with her husband so that he could calm down and write. This is actually the opposite of how writing works in my experience. When you're happy, you don't write. When you're unhappy, you write. Right. So Thomas Jefferson, again, there were all these declarations of independence, and Virginia had actually published its own essentially Declaration of Independence, and Thomas Jefferson wrote his own draft version of the Virginia Declaration of Independence. Okay. Yeah, he was just very into that kind of stuff, right? He was writing up documents that were not published just for funsies, right? So there were a lot of different ones that he drew on. And mostly when they were having debates about independence, they were mostly looking at, intellectually and philosophically or whatever, they were looking at the English Civil War, right? Which is in the mid 17th century. It's the parliamentarians versus the royalists, right? The King of England is raising taxes, yada, yada, yada. And the parliamentarians, the Puritans, led by Cromwell, fight him and win.
Yeah.
And the losers, the royalists, a lot of them run off to America and settle in the South. And they're the Cavaliers who then make the backbone of the aristocratic, more violent, more refined, honor-oriented Southern society, whereas in the North, it's all the Puritans.
Gotcha.
Right? So yeah, in the South, they do not like, I'm not going to say God, I'm going to say religion, because they literally just fought and lost to the Puritans. So their angle on religion was maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit. So that's why Thomas Jefferson famously did not include any mentions of God in the Declaration of Independence, which is crazy at the time. This is the mid 18th century. But yeah, they were not a very religious bunch.
Well, they said specifically, they were looking at the Enlightenment and they wanted a secular society.
Yeah. And so there's this famous speech, which is, of course, gone now, but towards the beginning of the Civil War, the Royalists hung a prominent parliamentarian commander, and he said that he goes to his death, a gallows speech. He said he goes to his death still committed to the idea of human equality because he has never known a man to be born with a saddle on his back, and he's never known another man to be born with boots and spurs on him such that he can ride the first man. Right. So that's where all men are created equal. That was the concept, that government comes from the consent of the people rather than from a king. Right. So this is the concept, and this is rich in English history. Right. It didn't come out of nowhere.
Well, and the English had colonies all over the world at this point.
Yeah.
And had any other colonies rebelled?
There were mutinies, but no, not in this big organized way.
So that's the reason they had to look at the English Civil War, because they had nothing to base this on.
Well, they were Englishmen, and the English Civil War is really important. That's what they were raised with.
Okay. So and then, they really saw this as an English Civil War.
So, and in the early documents, in the early journals and letters and whatnot being sent during the Revolution, they did talk about it as a civil war because it was Englishmen versus Englishmen.
I gotcha.
Right? And then they also mostly looked at the Glorious Revolution, which is an event in like the late 17th century where the British got rid of their king because he was Catholic. Anti-Catholicism is a really important line in British history. And they essentially invited in a Dutch nobleman to become the new king. That was William and Mary.
Wow.
Right. So it was kind of an invasion because it wasn't legal.
Yeah.
But the people were on the side of the Dutch. Right.
More of a coup.
Yeah. And so this is interesting and relevant because now you have a German, running Britain, and that's the House of Hanover. So that's, King George and all of his guys, right? So they own a lot of Western Germany because of their background. So when they were hiring German mercenaries to come and fight the Americans, that was normal. This was not crazy, right? They didn't do this out of like brutality or cruelty. This is just what they did. They hired Germans because that's their background.
Well, and they were talking about the Hessians. I think that Pete Kapler's character talks about the Hessians dressed up like Scots.
Yeah, and the Americans were really that's what radicalized a lot of people at the time, was the idea that the British were bringing in foreigners to kill them. Yeah. It's one thing when it's like it's a domestic dispute, but they were hiring foreign mercenaries to come and kill them.
Okay.
But again, from the British perspective, this is normal. They're fighting a conflict, so they bring in Germans because the Germans are the old Norm Macdonald bit. I don't know if you're a history buff, but they're pretty good at fighting. Not the last 60 years or whatever, but historically speaking, they're pretty good at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the intellectual history, whatever of the Declaration is the English Civil War, the Glorious Revolution, and then the other declarations and then Thomas Jefferson's own draft. He did not have sex and then go, oh, now I'm writing the Declaration. That's just more sexy.
Yeah.
That you have Martha Jefferson come and sing this really wonderful song, he plays the violin, and then that leads into writing the Declaration.
Yeah, well, if without these kind of things, it becomes very male-heavy.
Well, and there's no world where talking about the intellectual precedents of the English Civil War is more interesting than an attractive woman singing a song about
love songs.
Thinly veiled allegory for sex, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, again, you got to zhuzh it up. You got to make it a show. Okay, and then kind of the last item is that the finale of the show is about slavery. Right, and this is true that Thomas Jefferson did include a section condemning slavery in the Declaration, and then it was stripped out. So they do spend like 4 days in real history editing the Declaration of Independence, and they add in a phrase about God, because come on, and they do take out the section on slavery. But at the time, it was not very controversial. In Thomas Jefferson's journal, he just said the South wanted it gone because they're slaveholders, and the North agreed because they're equally culpable because they engaged in carrying the slaves, right? So that is true. That is absolutely true.
And so that whole song about molasses Roman slaves, that's completely true.
This is all true, yeah. So in the modern context or whatever, we think of war as like an organized state fighting another organized state to like try and annex something or trying to defeat the other state. And back in the day, often it was for money, right?
Yeah.
Like in the 100 Years' War between England and France, England would take a couple castles and then say, if you give us money, we'll leave, right? It was just trying to get the dosh, right? And so often, Britain fought Spain a lot historically. And a common thing that they would ask for at the peace settlement, because often Britain won, was called the asiento, which was the commercial monopoly on supplying Spanish colonies.
Oh.
So the English were like, it's really troublesome to run a slave colony. So instead, we will just supply you. We'll run the ships, and then we can get the milk without buying the cow, so to speak.
Yeah.
So they would run the slaves, and then they would run back the sugar and the coffee and so on and so forth, and they would get all the money, while the Spanish had to actually deal with actually running this stuff and doing it.
I gotcha.
So it was very smart from the British. So they were not having these huge slave plantations themselves, the British, but they were getting the dosh from it.
Yeah.
So this is actually very common. The Northerners, because the South did not have shipbuilding capacity. It's absolutely historically true that the North was engaging in the slave trade.
And in the first draft, does Thomas Jefferson really believe that we're going to free all these slaves and they'll become American citizens?
No. Thomas Jefferson wanted to export the black slaves.
Send them all back to Africa.
Yeah. That was often the argument for slavery. Nobody was in favor of slavery,
enslaving people.
Often the argument for slavery is, well, what are you going to do with them?
Yeah.
Right. And so like Lincoln, sets up Liberia. Well, he doesn't set up Liberia, but he's very pro-Liberia, right? Which was the American effort to colonize, that was the phrase they used at the time, the freed black population.
Okay.
But yeah, so their understanding broadly was that slavery was just going to go away on its own because that's what had happened in the European experience. Because you have, in the Roman Empire, you have these huge slave colonies. And then between the decline of the Roman Empire and then the church getting involved, slavery goes away, it turns into serfdom, and then it just evaporates completely. And that's also what you see in the in New Spain, right? The Spanish first enslave all the Native Americans, and then the church gets involved, and it goes away. Then, of course, the Spanish bring in black slaves, and it gets even worse. It's a long story. But the point is that it wasn't super controversial. They honestly believed that slavery was just going to wither away on its own. It's just that this cat named Eli Whitney invites the cotton gin, and actually slavery becomes far more productive and powerful than it ever had been before. And so, in a modern perspective, because we know what a big deal the American Civil War was, that's often what we're thinking of.
Yeah.
But at the time, they were like, yeah, it's just going to take care of itself. Don't worry about it. This did not turn out to be the case. So you have to address it, but it is kind of a modernism.
Okay.
Thomas Jefferson did write it, and they went, we're taking that out. And Thomas Jefferson went, okay. It wasn't a huge, the Declaration was threatened, and they weren't going to declare independence. That simply didn't happen.
Yeah.
But no, modern sensibilities, you have to address it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nope.
and the song is accurate. It's perfectly accurate. It's 100% on spot on.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So we went really deep into this, but it's mostly because we do have someone who can speak well about it, who understands it, but also because a lot of people did come away from the show thinking, I should probably look at our history books and see how much of this is actually true. So I'm glad we had the opportunity to do it here.
And it is true that Benjamin Franklin was a horn dog.
Yes.
That's absolutely... We were talking about the bad characterization earlier.
Yeah.
John Adams was a devoted firebrand. That
Yeah.
is absolutely true. And Ben Franklin was a gentleman horn dog.
Yeah.
God bless him.
Yeah.
So that's spot on.
Okay. Well, I think that wraps up the history part of the Opening Night Club podcast. We do want to remind you there are tickets left for 1776, and you can understand what we've been talking about today if you haven't gone to see the show already. We have an opening night coming up for As You Like It at the Riverside Playhouse. The Short Shakespeareans will be doing that.
And Urinetown auditions are coming up.
Urinetown auditions are on the 10th and 11th.
Yes.
So if you want to be in Urinetown, which will be in October, make sure that you go to auditions for Urinetown.
Urinetown is a dynamite show, and John Mauser's directing, and he's a dynamite director. So I think it's going to be a great experience.
I love working with John.
Yeah.
So if you have an opportunity, audition for that show. And LST, Leavenworth Summer Theater, has all 3 shows up right now. So go and get tickets to Sound of Music, Anything Goes, and Bright Star. And we're going to be going to Bright Star. We'll be talking about that in a future podcast. But make sure you go out and see one of these shows. And whatever you do, make sure you go out and see another opening night.